Hey, we have
Morton's
somebody
in the
joining
waiting
us
room.
from Russia. Okay,
All right.
And
got it.
welcome to the E-Club of World Peace. It is August 31st. My gosh, August 31st. Tomorrow is September. Are you ready for September already?
Oh,
So welcome everybody, and to a very important evening. I just want to share a couple of things prior to moving to our wonderful guest. And that is, everyone should have, or you will see, a invitation to our fireside chat, which is Thursday, this coming Thursday, 6 p.m. West Coast time. But this is when we gather together to talk with each other, get to know each other all the more. We're going to be welcoming the new members, and which is really going to be wonderful, the new members of the last 2 months. So please come and join us. And Asha had a wonderful suggestion after seeing what I had sent out today, that everybody literally bring a hot cocoa. So show up with a hot cocoa. We can share hot cocoa together as we sit around the fireside chat and get to know each other. So that's a great idea. And speaking of Asha, Asha Ashokan, again, member of our club, she's done significant work in the realm of nuclear weapons, the disarmament, the elimination of. And one of the things I came across recently that she said, which was, we must eliminate the scourge of war from our earth and rid ourselves of the tools of our own destruction, especially nuclear weapons. We must remember humanity is one family. That really touched my heart as we prepare to hear Helen. So that's a good way to enter into this evening's talk. So Rudy, you've got it.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks, David. Karen, you want to mute yourself, please? Get a little feedback there. Thank you. Ira, good to see you. And Anne's on. Dee's on. I've got Dominique coming in from Haiti. And Kaylin's on, visiting us. The visitor here tonight. Barbara, great to see you. Carol, great to see you. Bill Timpson's with us. Peter, good to see you. Everything's well in San Diego. Andrea, you're up here in the mountains with us. There you go. Let's stay safe, fire safe up here. Greg, good to see you. Helen will get introduced here in a minute. Great to see her. I haven't seen her since yesterday, I think. So Tammy, good to see you tonight. And Justin, great to see you. Thank you for joining us. Julie, as always, great to see you. And you notice that Terry got her pin for her Paul Harris Fellow +3. Is that right, Terry? Correct. Thank you for your gift to the Rotary Foundation. 619788. Who is that, please?
Melanie Bennett on the line.
Hey, Melanie, great to see you or listen to you. Okay. Good. Sherry, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Happy to join you from Minnesota.
There you go. Great. Hope all is well in Minnesota. Sala, great to see you. And Dominique, how is are things going down in Haiti?
Thank you for asking. Hi, Rudy. Looking great. Things are more orderly this year, and the donations are going where they should go. I've had friends from Nevada sending in their dues, and they send them pictures. They go to Bernard Meuse, where most of the earthquake victims are taken for their limbs and all of that. And the rest is in Lekai. It's well done. There are a lot of countries down there. Some people are still saying that they don't receive stuff. They are hacking trucks that are loaded for donations. But overall, it's better than the last time.
Yeah, well, good.
So
Good.
we are waiting.
Okay.
We are waiting. They are
I thought-
fixing the lights.
Our thoughts and prayers are with you. I'm going to be on a meeting Thursday morning early to see what we can do.
Thank you.
in that regard. So stay
Thank
safe,
you.
please.
Always the Rotary is always there for all of us. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Haiti, I feel welcomed. Thank you.
Arthur, good to see you. Jack, keeping
Everybody.
things safe over in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I just put in the chat a link to an op-ed I just wrote that war is over, that Afghanistan shows military power isn't, and it shows what is the real power in the world. So take a look at that. The second one I posted, I was just trying to put the Facebook link and it put more than I wanted to, so you don't have to contact their editor. But do take a look at the top one, the op-ed that I just have written.
Okay, thanks, Arthur. Warren, good to see you. Mark is getting ready to lock down Hawaii over there, so we can't go there anymore. Who else we got on there? John Dar, great to see you tonight. Super there. Bob, things
Hey,
okay out in Cathedral City?
We're good.
Okay, great. Marilyn? Caitlin's coming back in here. People are jumping around my screen. So where are we at? Marilyn's here. Brian, good to see you. That doesn't look like Robert Reed, though.
Yes, Robert Reed's here from Halifax, Nova Scotia, holding up the eastern part of Canada.
Well, that's good. Somebody needs to do that, so appreciate that.
I was born here, but grew up in Minnesota, and I know there are 2 or 3 people here from there.
That's great. We have a visitor with us tonight from Vladivostok. Evgenia, great to see you.
Could you give me 30 seconds just to say thank you? Thank you, everyone who is present here. Rudy, thank you so much for the gift of this bell and the pins you're sending us. And last but not least, let me invite all of you, if you can attend. I'm here just to listen to what peacemakers, peacebreakers are. I mean the club, because my club is the first in the Russian Far East that will be chartered as the Peace Vladivostok Peace of the World Club. So I want to learn what it means to be a peacemaker, or whatever the word. Thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. And as you get the Zoom link to me, then we'll be sharing that for the your 25th kickoff of that new club. So we look forward to that. And thanks for the opportunity to join you.
Rudy,
Yes,
can you ask Warren Benz to tilt his camera?
I will, but not how to get through these names. Okay, David Churchman's on. David, great to see you. Catherine's down under in Tomorrowland. Good to see you, Catherine. Fred is creating more cities of peace out there. Good to see you, Fred.
Thank you. Hello, welcome.
Let's see, David Fishman's on. David, good to see you.
Thank you.
Betty Kibble, thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you come back many times. Anya, how are you?
Great.
There you go.
Пожаловать в Владивосток.
Dennis,
Thank you so much.
Dennis, good to see you. Adam, as always. And thank you for connecting Christina with us. That was a great presentation. Really appreciate that, and make sure we stay in touch with her. Richard, good to see you tonight. Brad Jeffries, looking good. Mary Jo, great to see you.
Hi, Rudy.
Hey, Tony, how are you?
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Kate. She's our youngest member. Good to see you, Kate. Keep smiling up there. Who have I missed here? Connie, great to see you tonight. Vanna, looking good there. Good to see you. Julie, great to see you tonight. Joni, good to have you with us tonight. Good to see you. And Jamie, doesn't have her camera on, but Jamie, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Caitlin is on, visiting us. Ya is on her phone. Let me see. Asha's coming in here, so it's a good thing I killed a little time here till Asha could come join us. And I just actually made a nice connection with her and Chick Downbach, because he lives over in that Washington, D.C. area as well. So I look forward to them meeting together and doing some great work together on peace, which is great. And if I missed anybody, apologize. You can speak up, but we have a really, I'm grateful for the crowd we've got here stretching across the globe, and our reach continues to grow across the globe here. And great to have some of our young folks here with Justin representing Rotaract, and it's really great to have him with us tonight. So I'm going to turn this over to Barbara to introduce Helen for us tonight. And Barbara, take it away, please.
Thank you so much. And I like what you said, from across the globe. We still have the globe in one piece, and that's why we have Helen Peacock. We want that globe to stay in one piece. Our planet deserves it. World peace, pipe dream, or possibility. Tonight, you're going to hear from Helen Peacock. She's passionate about peace, as all of you are. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. Both inner peace and world peace since her early 20s. She's the founder of Pivot to Peace, a local peace group in Collingwood, Ontario, which is part of a newly formed Canadian-wide peace and justice network. We can't have peace without justice, can we? She is a chapter coordinator of World Beyond War, a global movement to end all wars, which has members in 190 countries around the world. Prior to full-time peace activism, Helen was a computer executive. She was a management consultant specializing in leadership and team building for corporate groups. Her mission today is to engage as many people as possible, Rotarians and non-Rotarians alike, in the movement to shift our planet toward what she calls peace consciousness. She has traveled to 114 countries and has a personal connection to each. For her, there is truly no other. We are all citizens of the world we share. I had the honor of interviewing her on peacepodcast.org, and I've had the honor of being on World Beyond War. I have been on so many Zoom meetings with her. I feel like she's family, and I think you're going to feel the same way. We have somebody in our family working for world peace. Welcome, Helen Peacock.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for that. I'm also a Rotarian, everyone. Thank you. Let me just try and screen share here like I am. Wonderful.
And if you want to, you go to speaker view at the top.
Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes.
And everybody can hear me?
Everything's fine, Helen, go ahead.
Beautiful. All right. So fellow peace builders, all of you, I feel like I'm talking to my tribe. I'm sincerely asking this question, and I think all of you in the audience tonight are going to say, of course, world peace is a possibility. That's why we're here. And when I talk about world peace, I'm talking about the absence of war as a means of resolving conflict. I'm not talking about the absence of conflict. And I find that when I talk to many Rotary clubs, they think it's a pipe dream that we can actually eliminate war on the planet. My other question, I call it the mystery question, is why do we still have war anyway? I mean, if survey after survey says that people want peace, how come we still have war? So we'll look into this a little more deeply, but before we do, I want to share an experience I had. My husband and I were in Panama just before the pandemic struck about a year ago. And we were reading about the Panama invasion, which you may recall happened in 1989. And we were learning that it had been concentrated in an area called El Chorrillo. And we wanted to go to El Chorrillo, but to our astonishment, the concierge in our hotel refused to help us, saying he could not guarantee our safety. So we spoke to a friend we'd made on the street who reluctantly agreed to take us, provided we slumped down in the car and didn't draw attention to ourselves. And off we went to El Chorrillo. He said it wasn't just our safety he was worried about, it was his as well, because he was with us and we looked American. So we're slumped down in the car, we're driving into El Chorrillo, and the first thing we see was this huge, very fresh, very angry mural on the wall. And for those of you who don't speak Spanish, it says, "Never forget, never forgive." And we're thinking, oh my God, this This happened 30 years ago, and this anger is so fresh and so raw. What are we missing here? And what we were missing was the fact that 4,000 civilians died in the Panama invasion, most of them from El Chorrillo. And what we were missing was the sheer trauma that was inflicted on this community. One moment they are asleep in their beds at night just a few days before Christmas, and the next moment this. Imagine the fear and the terror and the desperate need to protect the children. And people were found dead in their home. People were found fused to their car because some kind of new laser weapon was being tried out. People were found with bullets in the back of their head. And everyone was evacuated from their home, and then systematically, block by block, using walkie-talkies, the soldiers blew up the homes and burned them to the ground. And all Dave and I could think was, how come we didn't know this? I had watched the coverage of the Panama invasion on television. How come we didn't know this? Now, the other story I want to share with you is the story of my own Rotary journey. I had an interesting Rotary journey. I joined Rotary, already a peace activist, having gone to the conference in Toronto in 2018, and I was high as a kite. I just imagined there would be all kinds of synergies between the work I was doing with World Beyond War and what I could be doing within Rotary. But after a while, I started to have questions. If war is the greatest threat to peace, what was Rotary doing to help end war? And in many Rotary circles, the word war isn't even in use. And how is Rotary helping shift the trillions of taxpayer dollars that are going into war to positive peace? And how is Rotary using its voice at the UN and on the world stage to advocate for what the Institute of Economics and Peace calls cloud solutions to the issues of shifting to peace? And I was beginning to wonder, I wondered if Rotarians knew that there had been 250 major wars since the Second World War, 50 million people killed and so on, displaced, injured, bereaved, that war was the #1 contributor to the climate crisis, and that it was costing 2 trillion taxpayer dollars per year going into war and the preparations for war. 1 trillion from the US alone, 500 billion from the NATO allies, and 500 billion from the rest of the world. And according to the Institute of Economics and Peace, it was taking almost $6 trillion out of the peace economy. And I wanted to work on these issues. I wanted to educate people about this. And I wanted to look at the big picture because I knew that there was this huge military industrial war machine out there that was costing us and undoing all our good deeds, basically undoing them. And I felt that Rotaries, it seemed to me anyway, that the focus on positive peace, the exclusive focus, was asking me to willfully ignore what I knew. And I couldn't do that. And in the end, I resigned. But I wasn't gone for long because the district governor-elect of our district asked me to replace him as district peace chair. And he gave me a mandate from heaven. Yes, talk about the positive peace initiatives that Rotary is doing, but yes, he agreed with me. Canadian Rotarians would be interested in what was happening with the peace movement in Canada, and they would be interested in what it was going to take to end war. So I had a mandate from heaven, and I imagined I would talk to every club in our district. But again, about a month later, I received a cease and desist order from the then district governor of our district. And I was told that no, in our district, the only thing a peace chair can talk about is peace centers and peace scholars, and raise the money that we need to support the peace centers and peace scholars. So you can imagine this wasn't enough for me, but this time the pandemic was in full force. We had a stay-at-home order, and I decided to stay and explore what Rotary was doing internationally. Up until this point, I'd had more of a Canadian focus. So I attended all kinds of peace conferences all over the world, podcasts, speakers events, some of them not by Rotary, but many by Rotary. And I took every online course being offered by Rotary Action Group for Peace and by the Institute of Economics and Peace. And I took several courses, in-depth courses being offered by World Beyond War. I was busy. And on top of that, I found myself on the receiving end of about 30 emails per week from Rotarians working to prevent nuclear war. And nuclear war wasn't even on my radar screen. I was a peace activist, but it wasn't on my radar screen. And so I put those emails in their own folder automatically in my inbox, and I looked at them over the weekend. But something really interesting happened inside me as I was doing this. I felt this shift, and I felt myself become absolutely convinced that in fact, Rotary could be instrumental, absolutely instrumental in shifting our planet to peace. And I'd like to share a couple of the experiences that were so pivotal for me in coming to this understanding. I went to a conference put on by a Rotary Club in India and a Rotary Club in Pakistan. I didn't know anyone there. I was just a fly on the wall, but there they were, two nuclear powered countries with a disputed border between them. And they were talking about how to diffuse the tension. And I just felt honored to be there. And this was a Russian podcast, a podcast on the problem of Russia, I put quotes around that. That was put on by a Western group. And a question came from the audience, a Rotarian, who's here tonight actually. And she said, has anyone ever thought about actually talking to the Russian people? And I thought, what a concept. Yeah, let's talk to the Russian people instead of listening to these talking heads talking about Russia. And I went and looked it up, and I know all of you already knew this, but I did not know that we had 77 clubs in Russia. And I thought, this is fantastic. And we have the inter-country committees between clubs in Russia and clubs in the US and clubs in Russia and clubs in Canada and so on. This is fantastic. And then there was the Rotary Peace Incubator Conference. Imagine putting on a peace incubator conference in Europe last year. There were 50 proposals related to peace. And there was one that was just so fantastic. It was a partnership between Rotary Action Group for Peace and World Beyond War, in which they were taking 10 students from 10 countries and giving them a World Beyond War course on building peace and ending war, and then mentoring them in a project in their own country. And I thought this was amazing. And we had the Canadian team assembled. Other countries included Venezuela and Cameroon and Uganda. Wow. So I'm pretty keen. And that brings me to the emails. I'm taking them seriously now. I'm reading them and I'm starting to follow the threads, and I'm recognizing just how little attention I have been paying to nuclear weapons. I'm calling it the culture of denial that I was part of. And of course, I hadn't considered the culture of denial because I was so much a part of it. And just to tell you a brief story, with my permission, my husband was disposing my books, bins of my books, and I watched them going out the front door of our house, and I felt anxious, and I ran out and I grabbed this book on the top of the last pile. And I loved this book in the 80s because it was a book about how consciousness shifts. And I'm so interested in that. How does societies evolve? How does consciousness shift? And briefly, it's the story of a scientific experiment on an island off the coast of Japan. And the scientists at one point started dropping sweet potatoes on the beach. And the monkeys loved the sweet potatoes, but they did not like the grit from the sand. And then one day, one 18-month-old female monkey washed her sweet potato in a nearby stream, and she loved it. And she showed her mother, and her mother loved it, and her friends picked up the habit, and gradually a small group of monkeys adopted the habit. And then one day, one monkey who had never done this before washed his sweet potato in the stream, ate it, and loved it. And to the amazement of the scientists, almost overnight, the tribe adopted the habit of washing their sweet potatoes in the stream. It was as if the added energy of the 100th monkey was a tipping point. And that's what I mean when I talk about tipping point, and can Rotary be a tipping point? Now, there's more of the story, but that's not why I'm telling it to you now. I'm telling it to you because, to my utter amazement, this was not a book about how consciousness changes. This was a book about preventing nuclear war. And I was so much, I wasn't just part of the culture of denial, I was a poster child for the culture of denial around this, because I had no memory that this book had anything to do with preventing nuclear war. Now, other issues I had not considered, the war game mindset. Even as we speak right now, there could be soldiers training to be able to launch a nuclear bomb in minutes to destroy our planet. Think of the consciousness around that. And the first strike doctrine, which we've all been reading about, Think of the fear that that engenders and the state of readiness and the distrust and the anxiety that that is engendering around the world. And the threat of use. This was a new one for me. I mean, they haven't been used, right? Nuclear deterrence works, right? Except that if I take a gun and I hold you up and I rob you, have I used the gun? And yes, I have. So don't think that they haven't been used. The threat of use is always there. And one presenter told us about 30 times that he knew of when the threat had actually been articulated. And this one is perhaps one of the most frightening of them all. This was a presenter who laid out a timeline from World War II to today and told us about 50 times that we were this close to nuclear disaster, large or small. And he said, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Because when you have that many weapons and that many people handling them and that much technology behind them, there's that much possibility for something to go wrong. We draw a line in the sand for democracy, don't we? And yet somehow we have allowed the most fundamentally undemocratic situation to arise in which just a few people can make a decision that can impact billions of us. And this I know I don't need to belabor. Staggering amounts of money, taxpayer dollars that are going in to maintain, modernize, and expand nuclear weapons that we can never use. And so I say, it's those of us, you and me, who are outside the industrial military complex. We're the ones with perspective. We're the ones who can clearly see that as long as there are nuclear weapons on the planet, peace is not possible. So I can answer my question from the beginning. No, it's not possible as long as there are nuclear weapons on the planet. The threat is always there. So back to my question, how on earth did we arrive at this situation with an escalating nuclear arms race, $2 trillion going into war and the preparations of war? How on earth did that happen? And there's been a lot of analysis done and research, and I refer you to John Horgan's book, The End of War. He correlated every possible kind of factor to war to find out where the correlations were, and he found only one. And his research has been supported by many others. Only one. Wars are made by cultures that celebrate or tolerate war. I live in Canada, one of the 10 most peaceful countries in the world, and I live in a culture that tolerates war. And he makes the point that you can tolerate something even while telling a pollster you oppose it. Real opposition takes work. So we can think of it like this. The culture we live in tolerates war, and the 250 wars since World War II are the tip of the iceberg. Now, of course, we don't want war in our countries, war over there, and that is what we are tolerating. And the culture is so much broader and deeper, and we're unconscious of so much of it because it's in our books and it's in our movies and it's in our games and our historical markers and our educational systems and our monuments. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So Einstein says no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. How, given that we're living in a culture with military consciousness, how can we shift to peace consciousness? How can we shift our culture? And I come back to the story of the 100th monkey. There was a point at which, if only one more person tunes into a new awareness, consciousness shifts. So that awareness is picked up by almost everyone. And we know intuitively that this is true. We can look to the Berlin Wall. It was up for years and it fell on a weekend. Why? Consciousness shifted. Or we can look to the women's movement. I was part of a consciousness raising group in the 70s. It was exhilarating. And we all know that the world today is completely different for our daughters than it was for our mothers. Why? Consciousness shifted. But if we don't want to just accept intuitively that this is true, let's go to the research. And Dr. Erica Chenoweth at Harvard School asked the question, what percent of a population must change its thinking behavior to shift the population? What percent do you think? And I think you're going to be surprised. 3.5%. That's all it takes. 3.5%. And I believe in every pore of my being that we Rotarians are uniquely placed to help reach that 3.5% because we're everywhere. We're all around the world and we are functioning We're all functioning in society. So how can we most effectively make this shift, help this shift happen? How? And of course, we have to start with ourselves. And I bring us back to the Panama invasion. Dave and I did not know. How come we did not know? And when we came back to Canada, we watched a documentary called The Panama Deception. And it said that television sold the Panama invasion. The anchors talked about it was a good day for us and our troops are doing well. There was no mention of the dead civilians. There was no questioning of the reason for the invasion, drug trafficking. We all know that wasn't the real reason. And my favorite example was one night on the NBC News when the US military occupiers were described as engaged in peacekeeping chores. You saw the pictures, peacekeeping chores. And the Latin American diplomats who condemned the invasion were described as a lynch mob. Now, I don't think our television anchors consciously were selling us on the Panama invasion. I believe they were given some information, they believed it to be true and complete, and they were passing it on to us. And I was listening and I believed it to be true and complete, and I accepted it and I moved on without question. So this is what we have to do. We have to recognize the culture that we live in and the stories that it is telling us, and we have to question them. And then we look at the big picture. What can Rotary be doing to help raise peace consciousness? And I say, let's consult the scientists. We consulted scientists for how to handle the pandemic. Let's consult the scientists on this. And I watched the entire unveiling of the doomsday clock this year. And you know that they've left it at 100 seconds to midnight, the closest that it's ever been. And they had three major reasons for doing this. And reason number one was the accelerating nuclear weapons programs. Our scientists are terrified of the accelerating nuclear weapons programs. So if we're going to listen to the scientists, we better start by getting familiar with the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which entered into force in January. And think about this. We had comprehensive treaties for chemical weapons and biological weapons and landmines and so on, but until now, not nuclear. But now we have a treaty for nuclear weapons. And it helps stigmatize nuclear weapons and serves as a catalyst for their eventual elimination. So here's where it stands right now. 135 nations participated in the negotiations. 86 states have signed and 55 states have ratified the treaty. 69 nations did not vote, among them all the nuclear weapon states and all the members of NATO. So that's the situation. So if we're going to consult the scientists and if we're going to take them seriously, and I really think we should, I suggest that what Rotary could do is advocate for worldwide support of the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Think of the difference that that could make if Rotary International endorsed the treaty and we advocated it for its support worldwide. Now, I'm guessing that some of you might be thinking, but. What is wrong with her? How long has she been in Rotary? How could she possibly not have figured this out? Doesn't she realize? Does she have bricks for brains or something? Rotary can't get involved politically. Doesn't she realize that? And my answer to that is, I don't think so. Because I read February issue of Rotary magazine about how we eradicated polio from Africa. I read it 3 times, the article. And there were 4 major challenges we faced. And the strategies we used to overcome every single one of them were political. How did we handle the issue of conflict? Negotiated truces and military protection. How do you do that without being political? What about the issue of rumors becoming a political thing and the misinformation that was out there? What did we do? We advocated with government leaders and educated the public. How do you advocate with government leaders without being political? And the hard to reach children. What a brilliant idea. We coordinated, we had to, the borders were so porous. We coordinated cross-border campaigns with surrounding nations. How do you coordinate campaigns with surrounding nations without being political? And finally, my personal favorite, political will. You know, eradicating polio was not a priority for many of the governments in Africa. So individual Rotarians use their respective roles in society and often their personal charisma to advocate directly with government officials in their countries to become active in polio eradication. Now, if that isn't the very definition of political, advocating directly with the government in your country for something you want them to get involved in, then I don't know what is. So I think we should be a little clearer in our thinking. It's not that Rotary can't get involved politically. It's that Rotary can't be partisan, because my fellow Rotarians, it is an indisputable fact that when it comes to saving lives, Rotarians can be brilliantly and effectively political. And we could just as easily cross out eradicating polio in Africa and substitute advocating for worldwide support of the treaty. And we'd face exactly the same challenges, and we could use exactly the same strategies to overcome them. We've done this already. We did it brilliantly. We did it effectively. We know how to do this. We can do this again. We can do this. So if we were to do it, how would we go about this? Well, we start by applying the four-way test. And would worldwide support of the treaty make us safer, leading to the elimination of nuclear weapons on our planet? Would it make us safer? And of course, the answers are yes, 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 and yes. Step two, promote the summit. This is a wonderful way of raising awareness. Our president, Shekhar Mehta, is speaking at a summit on September 30th with the president of the International Red Cross and the Undersecretary General for Disarmament from the United Nations. The topic, eliminating the existential threat of nuclear weapons. This is wonderful. And if you haven't already, send this poster to everyone you know, Rotarian or non-Rotarian, everyone you know. Send it to the schools in your district. We want as many people as possible to come to this summit. So promote the summit, please. And I've heard Shekhar Mehta speak many times. I've heard him say things like, we shouldn't be arming ourselves with weapons we won't use, and spending money on clean water is more important than the arms race. And you've probably heard him say this, think big, achieve the audacious. So let's do it. Step three, we need to promote the resolution that will come in front of the Council of Resolutions this year, October 1st, when they sit down. And some of you may not be familiar with the Council of Resolutions. We can talk about that after the presentation. But when they sit down, this resolution will come forward that requesting the board consider endorsing the treaty. Now, it's been sponsored by 3 districts, 1 in Australia and 2 in Canada, and there's interest in all of these other districts in the resolution. We're spreading the word as best we can far and wide, but this is not going to be easy to get this resolution passed. Last year, a similar resolution was defeated by over 2 to 1. Now, on the Council of Resolutions, there is a representative from every district. So the 535 people on the council represent the 535 districts in Rotary, and it's the same people who will be voting again this year. And we need 268 to say yes. So we need 135 representatives to change their mind. And we know people don't just change their mind on a dime. And so we've created a bunch of convincer strategies that we're hoping will persuade them. And we're getting the word out as much as we can now. And certainly awareness of the summit would be hugely helpful in persuading them to change. We also understand that one of the major reasons some of them voted against the resolution last year was they looked at it, they said, looks political, no, and that was the end of the thought that they put into it. So we're hoping that we can create a more thoughtful response this year with a 3-minute video that talks about that. Now, how can you help? If you feel inspired to help us, Anne has created a Google Doc with a progress in which we keep a progress report of how we're doing. So if you just email her, she can send you this information. Plus, we've created a checklist of everything that you might need to reach district representatives in your local area where you live. So we're asking you, if you feel so inspired, to talk with Rotary clubs in your area, find out the name of their Council on Resolutions representative. The district governor will know if they don't, and then contact the Council the representative, hopefully with a local club, and talk about the resolution. Give them a copy of the resolution, let them know it's coming, tell them about, give them the 3-minute video, which interrupts that habit of automatically saying no because it looks political. Reach out and connect to as many district representatives as you possibly can, and keep us posted on your progress. Thank you. If you feel so inspired, that would be awesome. Also remember that we have overwhelming public support for this, overwhelming, survey after survey, poll after poll. And in a recent one done just after the treaty was ratified, 70 to 80% of citizens in polls in Belgium, Iceland, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, Germany, the UK, Canada, Japan, and so on, support the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and want to see it ratified worldwide. We have overwhelming public support. So think big, achieve the audacious, grow Rotary to 1.3 million. Again, idea. By endorsing the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, Rotary is speaking for the 70 to 80% of the world who wants it endorsed worldwide. And when we speak for something that is so compelling and so important to so many people and so relevant to the very survival of our planet, we become a more compelling and relevant organization. And when we do that, it's inevitable. We will grow membership. It's inevitable. I just threw in the Nobel Peace Prize for fun. So I come back to the question, can Rotarians be the tipping point? And we really would like to know what you think. And so I'm going to, Anne, can you post? I'm going to stop screen sharing and ask Anne to post a link in the chat. Can you see it there?
Uh-huh.
I've ended up posting it.
Yeah.
And it will take you 40 seconds to answer the poll. So if you would just click on the link and answer the poll and then come on back, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Helen, this is very good, and thank you for sharing with us. The conference that Shaker Meta is going to be in we shared that in our newsletter. This last newsletter went out. Plus, it's been on our Facebook page, and we've shared that in the district. So we look forward to attending that and continuing the movement here. Anybody have some questions or comments here for Helen?
I just want to make a comment that, when you showed the first slide with the devastation that war creates, that was so empowering to my subconscious. It was like, yeah, these are real people, and that war was unnecessary. And the sadness that it damages future generations never forget, instead of bring peace to the planet. It's like they're harboring this pain. And that's a horrible way to live. Thank you for that. And thank you for your talk tonight. So my real question is, why are you so passionate about not having war? My late husband was passionate because he didn't want his grandchildren to grow up in a world that was at war. And so I'm sure you have a key reason yourself, Helen.
I do think of the children. I have grandchildren myself. I do think of the children. I also feel that this happened under our watch. I'm 70, and this happened under my watch, that we evolved to this $2 trillion taxpayer dollars a year escalating nuclear arms race. And I want to rectify what I allowed to happen under my watch, so that the world that we pass on to the next generations is a safer world. And I have a fundamental optimism about human capacity to evolve, consciousness itself to evolve. I know the story of how we eliminated, I think I've told you this, Barbara, how slavery was eliminated, slave trade was eliminated in Great Britain 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And it's inspiring that just a small group of people were able to do something that was so integral to the economy at the time. We can do the same thing today.
Can you repeat the title of that book? I bought it, but it's in my office. So the other.
Bury the Chains.
That book. What is the name?
Bury the Chains.
Bury the chains. That's correct.
Yeah.
That book,
It inspired me. Yeah.
it's amazing.
Jack, you got your hand up.
Sure, thanks, Rudy. Hey, Helen, a great presentation. It was very inspiring. So 2 questions. One, when do clubs need to submit their resolutions to their district? What's the date again?
The resolution has already gone in, Jack, so that we can't submit anything more. And it will appear in front of the Council on Resolutions on October 1st. So we want to reach the district representatives before then, if we can, and
Oh, I
let
see.
them know. Let them know the resolution is coming. Let them know that we really care about it and we want them to vote yes. And if they are enthusiastic about it, we want to invite them to become what we're calling a friendly representative. And we're going to have a meeting of the friendly representatives the week before the council meets, and they will strategize how to coordinate the meeting itself.
Okay, great. That was helpful.
Arthur, go ahead.
Okay,
Jack, I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. Follow up. When you and others are talking to Rotary clubs, other than the political issue, which you so effectively addressed, what kind of objections do you get? And the reason why I'm asking is, as I plan to approach our Rotary clubs, I'll try to coordinate with Barbara. I want to be able to anticipate those objections so we can have responses.
You know, I would lead with the 3-minute video.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the poster for Shekhar Mehta, our president,
Right.
is appearing on. I mean, what does that say about the issue?
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to say, no, we can't look at that. When our president is doing this, it's just so amazing. And then I would also, the 3-minute video is a kind of not a summary, but a different way of coming at what I just said in the presentation around the political issue. It talks about how there's that automatic visceral response for some Rotarians, but more and more Rotarians are being thoughtful about this question and looking at it more deeply and imagining the kind of difference that we could make in shifting our planet to peace were we to take on this project.
Okay, thank you.
Arthur, unmute yourself there. You got a quick question?
Yes, I'll ask you the same question I asked Shekhar. I'm so glad he's coming on. And of course, in my interview with him, which I put the link to in the podcast, in the chat, he mentioned that I asked him whether the United Nations, the Rotary indeed was political. It was key to starting the whole United Nations, key members. And that was a way to try to end the scourge of war in an era when we had even more divisiveness that was tore apart the world, created 75 million deaths. And Rotarians dared to imagine that the nations could come together into United Nations. How can we now dare to imagine that we take the next great leap and move toward coming together as a planet in a way we can actually eliminate the scourge of war, pandemics, and actually save humanity from self-destruction?
So we did that 75 years ago. And I think it's time now for us to do something equally big today. And I'm not sure what your question was, but the potential in terms of what we could do as Rotarians, I think is incredible. What was your question exactly, Arthur?
Well, the question is, how can we take that next leap forward? The United Nations was kind of an initial step, but it's, they got the Security Council blocking things and so on. How can we create a way that the true will of the people of the planet can be expressed as a global level and implemented into a regime of law rather than war?
I'm going to answer very simply, one step at a time, one step at a time. And we will be amazed at what will happen as we go forward one step at a time. And I think a lot has happened already that we may not be aware of. It'll start to come together. I think the next step we should be taking as Rotarians is getting nuclear weapons off the planet. And the shift in consciousness that will follow that exercise will lead to a lot more.
Bill Timpson, unmute yourself there. Bill, you have a question?
Helen, thanks for doing this. I always appreciate the leadership of Canadians for us Americans. Hey, listen, our club, we're terrified about offending anybody. We walk around on eggshells, and people always raise this political issue. as an educator, I know we don't learn unless we challenge and open up to different perspectives and rethink. How do we get people to open up to difficult, challenging questions?
Well, that's a really easy question to answer. I think about something I learned from my brother, the distinctions between a visitor, a complainant, and a customer. Visitors aren't going to listen. I'm not sure that I would ever be able to convince the past district governor of our district of this, but there are a bunch of people who will listen. And I think we want to pace them in their model of the world, pace them. And if we pace them and kind of model where they're coming from, we can then lead. Do you know what I mean by that?
Maybe.
I think we have to show that we understand their perspective. And
So
once we've established rapport, we can maybe open up to a different.
So empathy, work
Yeah.
on empathy.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
And I don't think they're bad. It's not like we want to make anyone wrong or bad. They have a different point of view, and we have an opportunity to give them some more information.
And it always starts with listening to them first, right, Anne?
Absolutely.
Helen, rather. I was looking at Anne and calling you. You know, I wrote the book Revolutionary Conversations, and the first step in a conversation between political allies or between political upsets is stop. Just stop and be peace in yourself and listen, because you can't change somebody who's angry or upset, but you can change. And sometimes just doing that stop and may I ask you a question? You walk in their shoes. Thank you, Helen.
David Wick.
Yes. So when is the vote taking place? October what?
They meet. Of course, they're meeting on Zoom. They're meeting online, but they meet October 1st. There is a period of 2 weeks in which comments can be made.
Yeah.
Did everybody see the survey link? I just
didn't work.
It didn't work?
I didn't get it.
Work for me.
No.
And we can, if you will email it again, I can get it out to most everybody here is on with us tonight. So.
I sent it again. Can you see it down there, everyone?
No, I never saw it.
Following up.
Oh, you know what? It's going to Bill Thompson. I think I need to send it to everyone. Just a
Oh,
second.
you just got it on to one
Sorry.
person. That's fine.
Yeah, hold on. I don't know how that happened. Okay.
Still don't see it.
Here it comes. Got it?
There you go.
Okay, there you go. Right.
That's better.
So my
So back to
so my point was so that Shaker's talk is the day before. It sounds like before they meet. So that's not much time. But as you know, with marketing and everything else, it's like how many times is somebody going to read something or see something to help shift their thinking? So whatever can be done ahead of the first to help people see there's a strong support for Rotary taking this action. So,
exactly. The average person will need about 3 convincers. Oh, I've heard it from here, and then I saw it over there, and then he said something. Oh my goodness. And then they'll think about it. So we want to get as much contact as possible over the next month. It's very important.
Right.
This is great. This is great. Mary Jo, you had your hand up there and put it back down to you.
Sure. Okay. So first off, I just want to say thank you, Helen. That was very inspirational, and I'm 100% behind your vision. I've become more of a realist as I get older. So the second question, you asked the question, or someone asked the question, what's the source of resistance? And I don't think in Rotary it's actually the political question, although I'm sure that is a phrase that's used. I think the source of resistance has to do with fear. I think the source of resistance has to do with power dynamics. So the countries that do not have nuclear weapons would definitely support no nuclear weapons. But, I actually, based on Rotary discussions, spoke to someone from the Department of Energy about this issue. I said, Rotary is interested in moving forward with no nuclear weapons. And he said, and we had a discussion. everyone agrees it's obscene the amount of money and research that is going into nuclear destruction. But he said, actually, remember, there are other antagonists, let's put them that way, that have nuclear weapons. So it's fear of not having the ability to, it's seen as a deterrence. And so to answer your question, not that I support any money going into any of this military industrial complex. I'm 100% behind you, but I'm responding to the question and also aware that I am speaking. You just said, well, how do we get people to listen? And how do we get a discussion going where we have different points of views? So I'm literally conscious that I'm talking to an audience that has a different point of view. Even as I speak, I'm saying to myself, you should just be quiet and listen. But what I'm conscious of is in the United States, there is a mentality that the fact that we have so much military power protects us. And that's just the assumption we're dealing with. So no nuclear weapons feels overambitious to me, but reduction of nuclear weapons, no first use of nuclear weapons. I just wonder if there's an open-mindedness to how do we present this as something that actually may happen. So don't be shocked by what I'm saying. I'm fully fascinated by the amount of research that you just put in, thought you put into that, but I'm sharing with you, what's the issue here? And that's what I see.
Ira, do you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Helen, and thanks, Mary Jo. I think, Mary Jo, that you're actually exactly right. In general, within Rotary, there is this response. It's too political. We can't do this as Rotarians. But within the general population, excuse me, to the extent that there is opposition to the elimination of nuclear weapons, it's for precisely the reason that you said. People have this incorrect idea that nuclear weapons somehow are to make them safe. And it's coupled with a real denial of the fact that these weapons are actually going to get used. There's this notion that they're there, they'll protect us, they'll never be used, and the world's going to be okay. And I think we need to have people understand several things. The most important of which is that these weapons are going to be used. As Helen, pointed out very clearly, it is not a question of if, it is only a question of when. And the other thing people need to understand, and there's a very specific way of addressing that. We can point to the many, many times that we have dodged the bullet, to the assessment of people like Robert McNamara, that we survived the nuclear weapons era, not because our doctrines were good or our leaders were wise or our technology was infallible, but because we were unbelievably lucky. And the current nuclear policy is really nothing more than a hope for continued good luck, which is an insane policy, an insane basis for global security policy. You don't hope for good luck, and if you don't get good luck, the world blows up. So we need to help people understand how close we have come, and we need to help people understand how bad it's going to be, because there's also misunderstanding about that as well. People will say in a sort of general way, they know it's going to be the end of the world, whatever that means. But people do not begin to appreciate how catastrophic a nuclear war is going to be. And so I think that has to be part of our message too, as well as, and within Rotary, as well as with the general public. We need to convince people that if they don't take action, absolutely horrible things are going to happen. And if people understand that, then they don't just sort of say, okay, fewer nuclear weapons. They do understand we need to get rid of all of them, because that is in fact what we need to do. The studies that have been done in the last decade show that as few as 100 small Hiroshima-sized nuclear weapons, if used against industrial targets in urban settings, will cause enough worldwide climate disruption to trigger a global famine that will put up to 2 billion people at risk and destroy modern civilization. So it is not adequate to lower the numbers. We have to get rid of these.
Yeah. Asha, are you still on?
Hi.
Asha, are you on? Asha's over in the nuclear group, band group over in Washington, D.C., and I wanted to see if she had a comment from that angle and what Congress feels that when they're talking to the representatives.
I have an alternative comment and my raise hand button.
Okay, go ahead, Sally, go ahead.
I think in addition to letting people know what can happen if we don't get rid of nuclear weapons, the bad effects, that we need to talk about the positive side of what happens when we get rid of them. Because not everybody is convinced by fear. And the things that we could do with the money to our climate and so forth, if we were not focused on nuclear weapons, is incredible. And I think that we somehow need to magnify that as well, not to give up on getting rid of them, but another source of energy. Our cultures love war. They think it makes us brave and beautiful and all this stuff. It doesn't, but an alternative vision is necessary. Thank you.
It seems like, and maybe this ties in with what Mary Jo said, if you speak up against war, people think you're not patriotic. And so if you're against, not pouring these trillions into upgrading nuclear weapons or more guns and bombs and planes, that you're not patriotic. And I think that's a problem we have in the United States.
Yeah. Can I just add to that, Rudy, that we think it's terrible in the United States, the political gridlock between the Republicans and the Democrats. It's just terrible. And in fact, what I think is really terrible is what they agree on. And they agree on this unaudited, exponentially ridiculous investment of taxpayer dollars in war and preparations for war. And they agree, the Democrats and the Republicans. So.
That's good. Eugenia, you have any comments for us from Vladivostok?
Well, at least first of all, thank you, Helen, very much. I was just listening and thinking hard. I was thinking, about what? About the fact that we, the Rotarians, have been the mothers and fathers, co-founders of the United Nations. I have not heard a single mentioning of this fact, that this path could be also instrumental in our, leveraging the achieving our goal. You take all the responsibilities on Rotarians. We need to have 3.5% of tipping the point. But before we do that, why not have this as not an alternative, but an extra pathway to achieve our goal? Is to talk to our representatives in the United Nations, so that I see this slackening. Maybe I'm not a politician, I'm an educator. I know two things, the strengths, all the pluses of educating everyone, the adults, the kids. Education is a force, non-political, non-military, of course. And second, the UN as an instrument to achieving our goal. That's what I was thinking about. Thank you.
Very good. Any other last comments here? We've been on here for an hour and
Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just, the last time I've seen research on college students' concerns and general public concerns, nuclear weapons and the threat of nuclear weapons just wasn't on people's list of concerns. It was way down in ranking. So perhaps, with the Rotary taking a stand on this, that might help. But, oftentimes the college students, high school students often lead to change, but this is not on their list of worries right now, where it should be. Do you have any ideas in terms of how we can change that? in our overall effort?
Unlike other countries, we pile the debt on our students to pay for all this military buildup, and we have for years. So I think college students are very aware of the debt that we're putting on them for the future. That's one thought.
Good thought.
Anne, did you want to say something? No. Sorry.
I would just add one thing. I was in a meeting with Professor Bill Potter with Evgenia and Anya, and the title of his remarks were, "Are we doomed to cooperate or are we just doomed?" And I think everything we've ever worked for in Rotary and elsewhere in our lives is going to be gone in 30 seconds if we don't do something. So for those of us who really are more interested in local things, yes, absolutely, we have to do those. But we need to speak out on the nuclear thing because we may just be doomed, period, if we don't.
Helen, this has been a very thought-provoking. Thank you for your presentation this evening. Thank you for your work you're doing. We're very glad that you decided to stay in Rotary and continue to pursue peace goals in Rotary. So thank you for that. And I thank everybody. We have a lot of visitors on with us tonight. Please come back any Tuesday night and be with us. If you're visiting a Rotary and you're not a Rotarian, please come back, drop me a note. We'd love to have you join our peace team here. And together, I think we have a lot of possibilities. And so, David, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All righty. So wonderful. Thank you very much, Helen. Again, deeply educational and inspiring and moving us forward. Next week, we have a wonderful discussion with Peter Meisen about the Global Energy Network. And that Peter launched the Global Energy Network initiative to promote the premier solution, the linking of renewable energy resource around the world. The initiative has earned an endorsement of 7 Nobel laureates, and Walter Cronkite called it the best solution to peace and sustainability that he's ever seen. Again, an important issue, and being aware of this is not separate. I mean, what we're talking about tonight is all part of our survival. The other, our global networks, energy networks, that's part of our survival too. But take a look at how we can move forward, take real action on these issues, and we will be doing more of that, here in our E-Club too, and how we can take action. So thank you very, very much. Great coming together, and thank you again, Helen, and everybody.
Mary Jo had a comment you want to make, I think. Mary Jo?
Oh, yes.
Unmute yourself, Mary Jo.
That was a mistake in my reactions, but I did want to appreciate. Thank you very much. This was an inspiring meeting, really thought-provoking. Thank you.
And it made me proud to be a Rotarian, that we're handling the tough issues now. I really, really feel that when we handle these tough issues, it brings us all into a new awareness. And I think Mary Jo, that you expressed so many ideas that I have in my mind, and yet the awareness is what I'm going to work on to bring this to more people understanding the situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Helen. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Bye, everyone.
And let's work together here, create peace on the planet. We can do it.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was
Thanks,
wonderful to
Barbara.
talk with you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Stay
See
safe.
you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
That was really fabulous.